Welcome to Causing the Effect, a podcast focused on the exploration of your mind, body, and spirit.
Mr. Philipp, how are you, my friend? What's going on?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
Philipp, I'm going to let just give everybody your full name because usually I do a little shtick, but Philipp, what is your full name? Because I'm going to botch it.
Philipp Samor Von Holtzendorff-Fehling.
Oh my God, it's just beautiful. I've been waiting to talk to Philipp. He's the creator of Leela Quantum Tech. We're going to be talking quantum energy today. I'm excited, but Philipp's trained in shamanic practices. He was also in corporate America like me. It's like you've done everything, Philipp. So let's just start with the big general question here. What is quantum energy?
Quantum energy is the energy behind the matter. It's also the energy that we have in each of our cells. So we literally could not exist without the quantum field in our cells. And each frequency pretty much that exists everywhere exists within the quantum field. So it's a below subatomic level that we're talking about.
Yes. And I'm sure everyone who's heard quantum mechanics, that is a science that describes the behavior of matter and energy, exactly how Philipp said, at the atomic and subatomic level. So we're talking on a very small particular scale that doesn't, this matter does not obey the laws of classic Newtonian physics. I'm a little diverse in this, but we're going to have Philipp just kind of explain it. How did you even get to okay, I'm going to create a quantum energy company? That's a big task.
Yeah, so I did not come from the physics side. And I must also say that, 2022 was the year where the Nobel Prize was awarded, the Nobel Prize for Physics for quantum entanglement. And we may get into that, right? So it's interesting that there's a lot of buzz around that currently. And it's interesting because it helps open people's minds. But otherwise, I don't pay much attention at all to what physics is doing there with quantum mechanics because it's, there's nothing behind it. It's all just a lot of science and testing and modeling and all of that, but there's nothing applied. With our technology, we're really talking about applied quantum entanglement and quantum energy, and you can experience it for yourself. So that's the big difference. We're really in the practical. And I come from the side of really ancient healing technologies. Mm-hmm. Over the time, I've gotten to know some of the most gifted healers on the globe. And, those people, they can see energy fields, they can manipulate energies, they can bring systems into balance, even over large distances. And some of that actually I can do myself because over about 20 years, I've been trained in shamanic practices and past life regression work and various energy healing techniques, but I'm not like one of those super gifted ones that we actually work with. And the idea was to, because they work with the quantum field and they work with information with specific frequencies. You can interchange the word frequency and information pretty much, and try to develop products that can do very similar things that a healer would do if you called them up and said, hey, I have this problem, can you help me? Then they'll start working with you. And that's pretty much what we achieved. And, it sounds woo-woo, but it's actually very physical on one hand, and it's very measurable, demonstrable, verifiable, and repeatable, frankly. But it really starts on the energetics. So it's not like you I don't know, you take a rod and hit your hand like that, which you would feel physically on that level. No, it works really on this below subatomic level. And then because we can promote changes on that level, it ripples through positively into the physical, where you can see that the blood improves or your heart rate variability improves, things like that.
And it is, and I love all of this. I love levels of consciousness. I love understanding about waves of energy. Anybody who's dealt with chakras, who's dealt with anything on the Eastern philosophy, there's mentions of this. And even now it's catching up to the Western world. I think that's why you're such an important piece of this, to bring the level of consciousness and awareness to the people who are going to say woo woo. And we're going to deconstruct those motherfuckers. But it is another piece to note that scientists have been using this technology to develop new kinds of computers, communication networks, sensors for imaging, measuring things. I mean, the MRI people for that was created. That's energy. Now for the people who come and say, well, wow, this sounds a little out there, Phil. How what is the scientific evidence on the healing power, and how can it be a game changer in regards to health and well-being on the individual level?
Yeah, good question. So we actually have given our products to multiple labs and institutes and doctors' offices across 3 different continents in Asia, Europe, and here in North America. And they've been tested by a lot of different methods, which is important to note.
Mm-hmm.
And in all of those cases, they were able to verify that there is an effect. And then even further, that the effect was even incredible, incredibly strong. And on the physical level, I think if we're looking at physical health, I think what's most relevant and important to people to hear are by now 5 randomized placebo-controlled double-blind and single-blind studies in regards to live blood analysis, where you assess the actual blood of a person. You do a before test, and then you can do an after test. The labs and doctors that did the studies, they actually added another step. They did a before test, then that was without Wi-Fi, and then they started Wi-Fi, turned the Wi-Fi router on, and did another blood test and looked, okay, what were the changes because of that? And then they turned on our tech while the Wi-Fi was still on. So we could actually compare it to 2 different states, right? And what you would see in each of the cases was that the blood started to clot relatively quickly, within seconds actually of turning on Wi-Fi, and then started to really clump more. You had stage 1, stage 2 of blood clotting. White blood cell activity and motility would decrease. You have like white blood cells, for the people that don't know, is a part of the immune system really, and they tend to get paralyzed because of EMFs, and that was shown also in the studies. Now, and then there were several other things, frankly, that were shown. And then they left Wi-Fi on, turned on our device, and oh magic, what happened is that all of these things were able to be neutralized. And even more than that, in most cases, the state was better than even before the first test, and that just within 10 minutes. So it's actually quite fascinating what happens on that level. The heart rate variability, I mentioned that's another method that we looked at, because it looks at a different angle. It's basically your autonomic nervous system that you look at when you look at the heart rate variability, and that improved also in all of the cases where there was an impact of EMF on the test subjects. Then there have been other methods used, and just lately we had a double-blind study done here in the US that actually proved that the ATP production of the cells, of the human cells, increase when you expose it to one of our blocks. We have this so-called block technology. But besides that, it's not just good for people, it's good for pets as well. There's a big study underway, and for plants. But then also you can charge water and groceries. And the Emoto Institute from Japan, which maybe rings a bell for some people, they tested, what effect does this block now have on water? And they were able to find it structures and optimizes water significantly faster than any other method that they had tested so far in their, I think, about 2-3 decade long history. And they've now been actually importing and distributing our products exclusively to Japan since about 9 months, which they've never done in their history with any other product. So there must be something there.
I think we've done enough. I think Philip has given the groundwork that we're talking about the real deal stuff here. And there's no surprise. I don't know if you've seen what's been going on, Philip, but with even the idea of frequency and how it's been used in, I'm a theorist that believes we kind of lost this science thousands of years ago, and this is how the Egyptians were building. It's a way the waves were used as a way to create things back in the day. And it's so interesting that this all is kind of coming up in 2023. Everybody's waking up and all this stuff is happening. Why do you think this was lost along the way? And I always think it's behind money. It's behind the people that pushed Tesla's ideas down and pushed the patents down, all of these things. But I'm curious to know your thoughts.
Well, I think on the larger scheme, it's just the way things are with creation. Everything is consciousness, and everything just happens and evolves and changes and changes and changes again and changes again. So it's just part of that. On the level that we think, usually that's the 3D level, right? Here on Earth, very physical, very rational. Yeah, I mean, obviously you can find explanation models to why, and I think, for certain groups that want to have control of something, or of larger areas or groups of people or the whole world even, it's not of benefit if the larger population has access to the actual secrets of this world and knowledge about it. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now, that we've lost that knowledge, as a species. You have, of course, there's people out there, and us included, that get it. And just what Tesla said is, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, you need to think in terms of energy and frequency and vibration, right? And that's so true, because that's really where all the magic is. That's who we are at core. We're energy and frequency. And then we've been dumbed down to believing that we're just this meat bag with five senses, and we can't even sense the five senses anymore, because we're just so caught up in all these things. And I think that's the shift right now, because we've been so dumbed down that now I think it's actually reversing. And that's why you see people waking up, you see a lot of things happening all over the world, and you see energy and frequency medicine technologies popping up as well. And that's consciousness, right? And then, those on that level, the same groups of people, that try to suppress such technologies, what they're actually trying to do is they try to suppress consciousness. But that's sort of laughable, because you can't suppress consciousness, and that's who they are, that's who we are, that's what everything is. You can't suppress it. It's impossible. And therefore consciousness will do what it does. It'll just, just expand and go where it needs to go.
Yeah. And we're not going to go down this tinfoil hat of the, COVID and all this stuff. But I do think there's certain people that benefit from human beings living unconsciously and just worrying about paying your bills, this and that, get the shot, do all these things that take your mind off of what are we going to worry about? Frequency and energy? Because I was exposed to this with brainwaves when I started meditating and really understanding levels of consciousness. When you moving from beta and alpha over to theta, that beautiful state of theta, and you're able to see everything in that creative state. I don't think whoever the powers that be don't want us in that state, because that's where magic happens.
That is very true. Then, and certainly that could make people angry, right, at those people that don't want that. But I try to shy away from that, because everyone is responsible for himself and herself, frankly, and that's what it boils down to. And also, as part of the learning process and evolving as a soul, maybe on that level, we need to go through certain learnings, right? And in a bigger picture, everyone is just playing a role, and they're playing exactly the role they need to play. So why don't we start with us? If someone is there that's still thinking, he's a meat bag and energy doesn't exist, well, just don't blame someone else. Just blame yourself and just try to get out of it. And that's actually the only thing anyway, because you can only help yourself, frankly. There's no one going to save you. And you can use tools, but you have to be open enough. You have to, go into the right direction. That's what I've come to understand.
Absolutely. And taking that approach is very It's a different view than some others would take. Of it seems everybody's it's easy just to be the victim and to blame, but when you start just taking ownership and responsibility for everything, even like how you said that, that's a powerful thing. Is I'm not even gonna get mad at the person that's mad at me or angry at me. I'm gonna be able to hold on to that. And I think it takes a level of consciousness to be clear and understand what is going on in that person's mind for you to not hold any grudge against them.
Yeah. And and that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take certain actions or, support that things change, right? That doesn't mean that at all. I'm not, suggesting we should just let everything happen the way it happens, right? But we need to really start with ourselves. And so that goes into this other aspect, because we've mentioned some of these physical changes of the technology really that are possible, which are quite amazing. But why are they happening? It's actually because they work on this energetic level, and our products can be calibrated on the so-called Hawkins scale. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dr. David Hawkins.
Absolutely. I did. I'm in the middle of Power versus Force now, but I did do the first one I was exposed to was the surrendering, letting go. So
awesome. Well, then you are absolutely familiar with this Hawkins scale, and whoever is not, and you're interested, you can Google it, and you don't even have to read the whole book. The whole book is actually great, once you get into it. But the Hawkins scale is basically a consciousness scale that is set from 0 to 1,000, where on the very low levels you find guilt, anger, and these like lower levels of states of consciousness, and then you move into 500, which is unconditional love. 540, 550 is joy, and then you move into the so-called enlightenment zone, right? And our products can be calibrated on that. And so we have now developed blocks even that calibrate higher than 1,000. They break the Hawkins scale for a couple of reasons, frankly, because when he set the scale about 20 years ago, it wasn't possible on Earth for objects and people to vibrate on such high levels. And now it is possible. And because it can be calibrated, it can also be verified. So they really work on this consciousness level. It's in essence, a high consciousness field. Now we call it quantum energy, pure quantum energy, but you can call it a high consciousness field as well. And what that does is if we as energetic beings are then in such a high consciousness field, we get these signals and the reminders of our own completeness. And it starts this process of us actually wanting to go there again, to call in our blueprint, to clean the DNA. The DNA is like a crystalline structure that lets in this blueprint, and it's sort of all dirty, on average now for humans. I'm saying that it's not the same for everyone, of course, but you can clean that crystalline structure so that all that information can flow better and come in better. And that's pretty much what's happening. And then the after effect is that the blood improves, that, your ATP production suddenly increases, your heart rate variability improves, but it starts on the energetic. That's really the flow of things.
Yes. And when we say that look at it like it's all consciousness is what we're talking about here. And what he said was, most of us are working out those lower levels of shame, guilt, apathy, anger. I'm very into this. I'm so funny you brought this up. I was just like, I've just put the book down. And what Dr. Dawkins believes, the expanded levels of your consciousness, love, ecstasy, peace, enlightenment. And what's fun to think about, Philip, is what if we get a couple thousand people together that are working on those levels? What kind of magic could happen then?
Yes. And it is already, frankly, because there is a lot of people out there that are working on that, and that's the path, right? Because you're unlocking more of your own consciousness. And I try to phrase it that way because often people say to expand your consciousness, but the consciousness is always there. It's not really that it's not there. It's just our access to it needs to be more and more unlocked. And that's what you can do. And as you do that, actually, also you start to get more insights. You'll have more synchronicities happening in your life. I mean, all these things that, maybe a completely scientific person would say, these things don't exist, but hell yeah, they do exist. And you'll start noticing that.
Yeah, exactly. And this the back end of this thousands of years ago was shamanism. And, we mentioned that that's what Philip worked on. And you're hitting all my books that I'm reading. And I was curious if you ever read, because I finished up, it's called The Neural Ecology of Consciousness and Healing. Have you ever heard of that book?
I have not, no,
Oh,
but it
Phil,
sounds interesting.
I'll send, you would love it. Dr. Michael Winkelman, what he's doing is he's taking the shaman of each time and cross-culturally looking at each perspective of how it kind of adapted and changed the environment, and how crucial whatever the healer was. So the healers in the 1800s would just be called witches or healers, whatever those are, and how the shamanic contributions to socioculture and cognitive evolution really pushed forward consciousness as a where it is today. And I don't think we wouldn't be able to have these high evolutionary conversations and be thinking and all this stuff without those practices thousands of years ago. And he breaks it down more of he does meta-analysis, 10,000 different variables and all these different forms that really the therapeutic effectiveness of the shamanistic practices are very illustrated through the clinical research. So
sounds very, very interesting.
See, I'm showing you a little, Phil. We could go back and forth here. But now listen, like if we're talking about frequency, it's something of the medicine of the future, or however you choose to harness this. The powers that be, let's use healthcare, right? That's kind of, this is your space, medicine. That's going to be, you're going to, rub some people the wrong way there. How does that make you feel? You nervous about it?
I'm not nervous about it. And we do what we can at the time when the time is right. And we're not fighting anyone anyway. We're not fighting anyone with what we're doing. And we're really building the new. That's what we're doing. And I think by building the new and staying very in tune with what's going on and what are the right steps to do, we're doing that. So, yeah. Cool. And if I wouldn't be doing it, someone else would be doing it. So
exactly. Sure. And now all the Leela quantum tech devices, let's talk about the practicality of them. They're portable. They're not invasive. What is it? It's like, is it something that you connect to yourself, or how does it work? Each one of these devices.
Yeah. So we have, on one hand, we have the extension of our own technology, which is the blocks, the Leela block technology. We have the so-called quantum block, an infinity block, which is much stronger, and a travel block for the car. And, if you travel, and they have a plate or multiple plates on the bottom and on the top. And in between, there's a highly concentrated quantum energy space, a multidimensional one. And you can tap into that and do a lot of things with it, but you can also just place it in your home. And at that point already, it harmonizes your whole home in regards to EMFs and in regards to any other potentially harmful frequencies that may be around. So you don't even have to use it. And it already has a positive effect on your physical body and your energetic state because you're in this field. However, the field is especially strong inside. So you will see if you calibrate it, usually we calibrate the inside of the plates, right? That's where the core is. And then outside it dissipates and then decreases. So, but then you can use it for certain purposes. You can put your hands in there, your feet, or, whatever. And then you have, because the field is so much stronger inside, you have a much more visible and faster effect on your cells, for example, on your blood, on your heart rate variability that you already have before when you're just in the field. But if you put your hands in there, way faster, way stronger, you can charge objects. So I don't know, any ring, watch, silverware, all these things you can charge actually. And metals permanently hold quantum energy once you charge them with a block, and they transmit the quantum energy too. So it's fascinating. If you put your silverware in, and then you have people over for dinner, that they'll notice it. They may not, even if they don't see energy at all, they'll be like, "Oh, this is so beautiful." Or if they've been there before, well, something has changed, and they can't point to what it is. But people that see energy, they could tell you obviously, wow, your silverware is actually vibrating in amazing way. You can wake up crystals with the technology. You can put groceries in there, and I'll get to that in a second, and water. So interestingly, with this grocery thing, and that's a claim that I'm not yet making because we don't know enough about it. There's studies currently underway, but we have heard from many, many people repeatedly that if they charge certain substances that they're allergic to in the block for an infinity block or travel block for like 5-6 minutes, they can tolerate the substance with no allergic reaction. And that's now actually been verified in a pilot study in a clinic in Germany that's specialized on this. And they were able to find a reduction in allergy response between 65 and 100% in all cases. And that included gluten, lactose, certain other things. And then they tested the stress response of sugar as well, and saw the same level of reduction in stress response if you charge like chocolates or other sugary items. So that's quite fascinating, but we still tell people, if you have a food allergy, don't try this at home, especially if it's severe. I mean, there's a lot of people that, do that, but that's really at their own risk because, and they probably don't have like a deadly allergy. Otherwise they wouldn't be trying it, but they have severe allergies. And we've even at the Biohacking Congress, a year and a half ago in Orlando, we did this live on stage with a biohacker that is severely allergic to crab meat. Not deadly, but they put crab meat in his arm here, and then it started to get red and itchy and all of that, and people could see that. And then the same crab meat they put in the Infinity Block live on stage in front of over 100 people, and it was also recorded, so you can find that video on YouTube. Yeah. And then after, I think, 6 minutes of charging, they put the same crab meat in his other arm, no reaction. It's fancy. Yeah. But again, so with food allergies, I think there's too many different variables at this point, and we're working towards more studies so that we can provide guidance. And at this point, we just say, just don't do it yet, please.
How has this been? This because what you're doing is bringing a new revolutionary technology to market, something brand new. How has that process been for you? Like, because it's funny to mention that before this, you were an executive with T-Mobile, which is still energy related. And I was curious, was there any correlation with something up there? But that first question, how was it bringing this to market and getting investors and from the business side?
It's all privately funded, and we wanted to stay that way because then you're not really dependent on that level. And we find that important, especially for such a technology. Bringing it to market was, on one hand, absolute fun, and joy to see what was actually possible, and working together with these top-notch healers was absolutely great. And then finding out these through studies, what we knew on an energetic level already, what would happen, then the studies always validated that, was also fascinating. As it was also fascinating to introduce it to people. Now, you may want to ask, okay, well, what was the challenge then? And the challenge was, and still is today, to me, it's not a negative challenge, like at all, literally not at all. But you have a vast majority of the people still that live so in their brain, and they can't imagine that something like that works, because you don't plug it into a wall. It's not battery operated. It doesn't contain magnets. So like it cannot work. And there are people out there that completely discredit it right out of the get-go and don't even look at the studies, don't even bother to put their hands in there to try it. You have these people, but you know what? That's great. It's no problem, because we don't need to give them our product. They don't need it. They're not ready for it yet. So our products actually go through the circles and the people that are ready for it. They feel it instantly. They know it. They can see energy. Like I think we probably have 400, 500 energy healers and people that can really see energy that use our products. That's quite a testimony. I don't think they use any other tool, frankly, to support their own practice and healing practice with other people. And then there's so many other people as well that come either from the consciousness aspect or they come from the physical and they've seen these amazing physical results. And that's how we want it to spread anyway, through the right people that are ready for it. And I don't need to convince anyone. I'm not even trying. If someone doesn't want to hear about it, just fine, do something else. That's great. And so in that sense, it's a challenge in a way, but it's not like a bad challenge at all.
Yeah, it seems that the way that you don't really have like you're not too worried about what other people are doing, what other people say. Was this always the way Philip was?
No, I don't think that was always the way, especially when I was still in corporate. Obviously, things were different, and even though I was like on this path already for quite some time, even already when I worked at T-Mobile and some other places in executive positions, it's like you can't bring in your full self into these corporate positions, and you're also affected to some extent. Well, you affect certainly the organization also with maybe a different view and level of consciousness you bring in, but the organization affects you as well. And yeah, when I started this path, I think in the early 2000s, really, at that point, I was cut off from my own emotions and feelings, and I was totally irrational. And had you told me at that time, I would have been one of those guys that wouldn't have even looked at it. I would have said, no, I mean, that can't work, bullshit. I was there at that point. And that's why I understand now how difficult it can be for people. Like if that's your full belief system, you can't allow that there's more than you can see and touch with your hands. But yeah, so we see that shift like each year. Like if we're at these biohacking conferences, for example, like each year we have like twice the amount of people suddenly come and show up, and then they come back and say, wow, this changed my life. And it's cool. It's cool, but it really is a process. And I wouldn't even want it to be for everyone at this point yet, because frankly, not everyone is ready for that yet.
Yeah. And I
and then we may run into other problems too.
Yeah. Using this stuff for bad, right? About the dark side.
No, you can't do that, thankfully. So that was the blocks that we provide, we only were able to do that because you cannot manipulate this pure quantum energy field that's inside. And you cannot manipulate with it, because it's the nature of this field, because it's a high consciousness field. What it does, it supports everything in regards to life and consciousness, and everything that is destructive or harmful to life and consciousness, it neutralizes on an energetic level. So you can copy frequencies with these devices, for example, and you can even distribute them over a longer distance. Like that's the quantum entanglement part that you can actually do with our devices. Like I could literally put a picture of you in there if you wanted that, and you would be in the field. Now, I could take a piece of frankincense and put it inside the device, and then you would also have the frequency of the frankincense with you. But if, let's say, I don't know, and you can work with intentions, but if someone had a bad intention and was like, well, I want this guy to get into an accident tomorrow and break his leg, right? The voodoo type of thoughts. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't work. It would fall through. The same with any like let's say if you took a drop of a herbicide or a pesticide in there, for example, on an energetic level, that would be neutralized. It's non-existent. It falls through. So you could not use it for nefarious purposes. And that was also the only reason why we were able to actually bring out the actual technology.
And I guess bringing that back to the Hawkins scale, really everything in there is going to be above the 500. So by default, the anger, guilt, negativity, that's not going to qualify anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, we even have a block here that we're using for certain things that calibrates at 2,200 on the Hawkins scale.
That's
and it blows
double.
People's minds. Yeah. And I'm not kidding. It's actually set up with a specific buffer and a harmony feature, so that when people that don't have such a high consciousness level come near it, that they don't start sweating like crazy and get an overwhelmed nervous system. So we had to do that because, these super high levels, you can't see it, you can't touch it, but those are strong levels. Those are very strong levels. And if we've lived our life completely unaware and unhealthy, and we get into these high fields, it triggers stuff, right? It triggers stuff to come up. And I mean, Ian Mitchell always, he's a very famous scientist. He always tells the story at the Biohacking Congress, which was in February of last year, where there was a guy that would run by our booth, and suddenly his heart rate, and he was measuring his heart rate constantly. His heart rate would like increase suddenly, and then he would walk back and decrease again. And then no matter where he went, he had no changes, just when he passed by our booth. And so that guy was noticing these effects, and we had a super strong block there. And it was literally like, go there, turn up, go back, down. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you're looking at even where the wellness spiritual world was 10, 15 years ago, a lot more people were in on it. Like in my previous life, Philip, I'm a hedge fund guy from New York City. Like I would have not been at 23 years old. I was like you in T-Mobile. And I'm curious to know, was there something that really turned you from the Philip of T-Mobile, who would have been more thinking, to the Philip you are today? Or was it more of a practice you were doing? Was it, give me the story. I'm sure there's something crazy that happened here, Phil.
Well, I mean, it actually was a process. It was really a process with me at the time when I mentioned, that I was so cut off my own feelings and emotions and all that. That was the kicker for me to say, well, that can't be it in life. And I, unhappy and no, and I needed to start making changes, which I did. So I got into that and developed a little bit. And then I met my wife. That was the next kicker in 2005, because she was born with the ability to see aura and energy fields. And she's actually and pretty amazing energy healer and like consultant. Like she can read people like no one else. Like she's probably top 5 in the world in reading people. Like it's absolutely incredible. And you can think like how that was for me then.
Good luck for you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was also terrible in between, right? Because you could always see everything, and you're like, oh, like, can't have your own thoughts. You know what I mean? Like, but certainly also amazing, because it really helped me, where I was still very skeptical of things, to really understand that world much better. And then I think all those practices, the shamanic workshops, all of that added to that, and it culminated in 2016, where finally I said, I can't do it anymore. The stretch is too big. Like I literally cannot stay in corporate anymore. I have to just live from within and whatever is my own calling. And that's where I think where the glass was full suddenly. And I was like, okay, certain things I just can't do anymore in my life.
And that the practices you were doing from get to A to B, was it a lot of meditating? Were you doing any psychedelics? What did that look like?
It was not psychedelics, even though those certain psychedelics can certainly be very helpful in opening certain paths, as long as people are careful to not like just use that as then the state, and then you need to go back to that state. It's really, how do we embody what we learn in the here and now? Really, that's what it is about. But no, that was not it. It was meditating, yoga. It was these workshops, a lot of practices, energy healing techniques that I learned, not really to help others, even though I ended up helping other people too. But it was really for me, because I felt like, okay, if I learn how to do that, I'm also helping myself, really. And that's really what I try to do.
Yeah, and I think people who miss that point of when you're fixing yourself or improvement, I don't like that word, but when you're just helping yourself, you're instantly helping everybody around you, because then you're a better human being. You're more, and it seems like it's working. I'm trying to get you to let's fight some freaking people here, Phil. You're not giving me no, but that's a wonderful way to be, because I do feel like we do get caught up in the anger and that those levels below 500, where it's really just a waste of energy and time.
That's true. And by the way, I mean, also, even if you're getting to higher consciousness levels, it doesn't mean that those emotions don't show up, right? Because it's still life, and still stuff comes up, and something may just come up that triggers you so hard, and then you're right there living through that one emotion again. But I think the art is then to recognize it and to let it go, and the reverse would be, to just grab that emotion, stay in it, identify with that emotion, and then go off, beat some people up, right? That's like the extreme picture I'm painting here, right? But that's kind of like what happens with people. And if we can just let these things go.
And it's a simple thing. We've done a couple episodes on that, but his book, Letting Go, and really surrendering those feelings, it's not something naturally from a Western side of things. We're not taught to do that. Like, I have to move through this feeling. No. I want to hang on to the resentment. I want to hang on to that. I don't want to fucking punch somebody. I'm from Brooklyn, Phil. That's what I'm used to. So turning this off it's been quite the journey. But as far as your kind of opinion on where consciousness will be 30, 40, 50 years. I feel like we're in a rough time. Everybody's a little overly anxious. Social media is maybe not where it should be. You're gonna need more police in there. All these things are all popping up the same way. Where do you see consciousness, spirituality, the completeness and oneness of the soul being 40, 50 years from now?
That's a tough question to look so far ahead. But I'm seeing it at least, in the next 5 to 10 years, significantly shift here, as far as us humans go here on Earth, right? I see a massive shift, but it seems to be a little bit of the scissors effect where, there's one part that really moves into this state of oneness, very close to that, really expanding the consciousness, unlocking the consciousness. And then you have another group that's declining, basically. And really on a soul level, really just checking out. So I don't know, like I can't see the future, but I do know it's time for a new age. Like, if we call it the golden age, I don't want to get here too spiritual or woo-woo, but I think we're seeing the beginnings of that right now. And if you go to a room that no one has been in for 100 years, in the basement, and then you suddenly light a light bulb, you'll see all the dust and all the crap that has been there for decades, possibly, and ages. And it was always there, but now you can see it, and that's ugly at first. But hey, that enables you to then clean it up, get rid of it, deal with it. And that's the phase we're in right now. It's, and we're making great progress. I mean, consciousness is expanding. A lot of people are waking up in general. So it's all amazing. Often we tend to say, well, nothing is happening and it's still all bad. But in the scheme of things, right, like a year or 5 years or 10 years is nothing. It's just a blimp in the, time is anyway just a concept, but we experience it nevertheless, right? So we experience it here in the reality. So it is relevant to us, but we often don't want to give things time, and just things and shifts of things that have been like that for hundreds of years just take time. We can't just transform all of that just in 12 months.
Yeah, I'm with you. Philip, thank you so much for your time. This was absolutely wonderful. And everyone, you can check out all the products. I'll put the Leela Quantum Tech website below. Any questions, feel free to reach out to Philip or myself. But this is really just groundbreaking stuff here, Phil.
Thanks so much for having me on. And if you want, I can send you a link to our private Telegram group that you can share with the listeners if they want. Then, they don't, if you don't want to take my word for it, just you can speak with over 6,000 users of our products that are always willing to answer questions and help out and provide experiences. So, and that's a fun group with a great vibe. It's, it's really cool people.
Yeah.
So
that sounds good to me. Sign me up for that. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put that in the notes below, and you can find all everything, testimonials, how it works, everything on the website. Cause and Effect community, thank you guys so much for all the support. I really appreciate it. If you guys could just share this with one of your friends, like, review, subscribe, that would mean a lot to me as well. And that's it, everybody. As always, stay safe, stay positive, stay blessed. We'll touch you later. Bye-bye.